Welcome to In a Nutshell, the podcast dedicated to all things agricultural consulting. I'm Dylan Brush here with soil genius and ag consultant Bill Brush, and we're delighted to accompany you on this journey where we break down the different aspects of agricultural consulting. In each episode, we'll dive into the realm of agriculture through the eyes of Bill Brush, where consultants like Bill play a vital role in empowering farmers, agribusiness, and agricultural organizations. If you're passionate about agriculture, problem solving, and enjoy a little bit of detective work, this podcast is tailor-made for you. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Agriculture in a Nutshell. Just wanted to start off by saying that today is another episode of Bill's travel log. He's going to be talking about one of his trips to New Zealand. So without further ado, I'll let Bill take it away.
Hey, welcome back to Agriculture in a Nutshell. And today I'm going to talk about another one of my travels that I took, and hopefully people will find these entertaining and amusing, and find out about some other parts of the world and farming and what they do there. So, but in my travels, I've been asked to do a lot of speaking engagements in different places throughout the world. And today I'm going to talk about one trip I took, which had some consulting involved, but also had to do with a speaking engagement I was involved with. And this is when I was able to take my wife, Glenda, with me on this trip. And we went to New Zealand. So one, she wasn't going to let me go to New Zealand if she didn't get to go. And so it was like a no-brainer. We'll just both go and enjoy ourselves, have a good trip, and do some consulting, and also visit some friends of ours. And it was really a great trip. But it all started by going there. I got an invitation to speak for one of my friends, Bruce, in New Zealand at what he called Worldwide Ag Conference. And it's a bringing of like-minded people and a lot of farmers from different areas. We had a one here in the U.S. at University of Missouri at Columbia. We had one in there. I believe we were in, I don't know if I went to the one, but he's had several of them. But this was one of the first ones that he had down in New Zealand, which I'd always wanted to go. It always seemed fascinating. My parents had been there, and they told me how beautiful it was. So we decided we would go and speak at this engagement and take a few extra days for vacation, but also to visit with our friends and Bruce, my friend, who's a consultant, ag consultant in New Zealand, and worked a lot with over the years. So he had me scheduled to take a couple days, and we're going to go out and drive out and talk to some of his clients while I was there. So first, I didn't know what we were looking at in terms of what crops we were looking at or anything like that, but we had a lot of them that were vegetable crops, field crops, grain crops, a lot of pasture there, and easy to get around with because they speak English, and that's the only language that I can speak fluently. So it was easy to meet up with growers. But one of the days we took out, and this was in their winter. And not a lot of people think of wintertime in New Zealand as what's that. But I can tell you, it gets very cold, and it can get snowy. And we left one day, it was beautiful, and we struggled to get home. We had talked to several farmers throughout the time, and basically helping Bruce confirm what we were doing and why, and giving them a little insight as to why things work. And it's always good to get somebody that corroborates your story, that you're saying this is how things work, and here's somebody out of the blue that says the same thing in the same way, because we both are of the mindset that that's how soils work, that's how crops receive nutrients and everything that goes with that. So we're just singing the same song, but from a different perspective in a different area, and it's what makes things work. But while we were out there, I got paired up. We had been out, and we met up with some other people and had lunch, and I was driving with this other person, and Bruce and some others were going back, and this gentleman was a New Zealander, and while we were driving back, we're talking, and I'm always talking, looking around, asking questions, and it begins to snow, and it begins to turn very dark, and it begins to snow really hard, and I can't see a road anymore. And we have a little, I think it was a Toyota, a small Toyota of some kind. And all of a sudden, these thoughts of me, two men found dead in a Toyota, frozen to death because the snow is getting deep. We have no chains. It's a tiny little car. I have no idea where in the heck we are. I can't see anything. It's dark. I don't think this guy can see any better than I can, but at least he's here, and hopefully he knows the road. And we kept going, and pretty soon, not a big confidence booster, he says, "Oh, I missed my turn." To which we went down until we found a place to turn around, so that we didn't get stuck. We found a place that we could maneuver around this little small Toyota vehicle and then head back. I can't see a thing. The snow is just blinding coming down. And finally, we're slowing down just to crawl. And he says, "Oh, I believe it's here." And I kind of saw maybe a little path, but not much of a road, because it is a whiteout. There is white snow everywhere, and I have no idea where we are. I remember coming here in the daytime when it was beautiful weather, and what it looked like, it looked nothing like that now. So finally we got turned off and got in, and sure enough, we arrived at our destination, which was Bruce and his wife Sally's house, and we were able to get inside and get warmed up. And I just was thinking back as I'm telling this story, how fortunate I was to make it back that day. I never thought about it at the time, but it could have been a real disaster if we'd have got off into a snowbank or went off the road because we couldn't see where we were going. And who knows if somebody would have found us that night or not. So it was fun. But we stayed in their house, got up the next day. It was absolutely gorgeous. Pristine snow everywhere, 6 to 8 inches deep, all around their house and their property there. And so we got up the next morning after that, and we were headed out towards where we were going to speak at, which was a town that was several miles away. And went down the road and saw them moving cattle down through the snow on the road. And that was interesting to follow them for a while. It actually made the driving a little easier because the cattle were pounding down the snow, so they gave us a nice track and footing to get through. So we got through there, and then the snow kind of let up, and then we started going, but we're headed towards the mountains, and a lot of people, if you've not been to New Zealand, they have some real mountains. And in fact, Bruce, my friend, commented several times, "Oh, we haven't seen a snow like this in quite some time." And I thought, I don't know if I should feel I'm lucky because I'm seeing something unique, or not so lucky because it's miserable to have to get around through the snow. But we went through a lot of beautiful mountain ranges with snow. The roads were in pretty good shape. We got all the way to our destination, and we're set up shop at a place and where we were all staying in the same hotel. So we were able to swap a lot of stories and things and meet each other and share some drinks after work and after our talk and everything, getting ready. So we got in front of these people and we talked about, a lot of soils. It was my mentor, Neil Kinsey, and Bob Perry, who runs Perry Ag Labs, who does is the soil lab with his daughter Megan that does all my soils and always have. And Bob's a unique guy. He's also speaking there with Neil and myself, and then several other people, some from New Zealand, some from Australia, all there to talk and a meeting of the minds. And it's those times after the conference and before the conference where that's where all of us open up and we share ideas and things we've done. And if they've got questions about, I've tried this and it doesn't seem to work, one of us seemed to always have some kind of an idea of how to make what they were doing better. And it's a lot of these trips were fun, beautiful scenery, fantastic. trips that we went on. But a lot of it for me at that time was learning, getting better at my craft, understanding how things worked, understanding there's so much more to know. And when we start to teach amongst ourselves, that's when really some expanding learning takes place. Because when the teacher and the student share ideas, and the teacher learns from the student, and the student is still learning from the teacher, that sharing of information is invaluable. And you remember those things for the rest of your career. Because whenever you have an issue or something, you can think back to these times because they're so memorable, and they're of seeing people and learning from them, etc. And there's been several other cases on my journeys and consulting where we've done that, where it's just been fantastic. But on this trip, we had envisioned ourselves going over and seeing a few other sites, but a lot of the roads were closed, so we were limited to doing the conference and then going back. And our friends Sally and Bruce got us over to Christchurch, which is a beautiful town. And anybody that's familiar with that, they sustained an incredible earthquake that just about destroyed the city and many of the historical buildings in it. It's a very beautiful old city, but there was a huge earthquake, high, I believe it was up even maybe over 8 on the Richter scale. So massive amounts of damage. And they went into, we happened to go into a theater, and this theater was set up such that the sounds and everything gave you what it was like if you were at the earthquake at that high on the Richter scale, what it would be like. And it almost felt like you were in the middle of an earthquake, even though you're just sitting in a theater. It was just something I won't forget. But we were able to tour and see some of the damage, and then see some of the things that had been repaired and re-engineered to take care of any of the further damage that might occur. But it was really a great trip that we took that time. Went back and flew back out of Auckland back home. But a great trip, met some good people, and great information that I still use today. I had another trip I'd made also to New Zealand, where my wife and I, we were able to go and view some things, which I don't know about you, but I'm a massive Lord of the Rings aficionado. I loved it. I read those books when I was clear back in high school. Tolkien's things were just grabbed me and just took me all the way through that, The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series. And so we were able to go out and see where a lot of it was filmed. It was Hobbiton. And we were able to go out and go through and saw how they filmed these. And a lot of the scenes that I remember from the movies that we saw and where we had been there. And they had statues of Gollum and Gandalf. And anyway, we looked and just had a marvelous time engaged in there, and saw how they made the buildings look bigger than they really were, and the way that they were able to take normal-sized people and make them look like they were super tiny. Just a fun part of that trip. We also looked back and at another time to New Zealand, and I was on a cattle buying trip with some of my my sponsors there from the Philippines, and we were looking at a specific type of cattle that was being bred there in New Zealand, which is crossing some, I call them American or English variety types. It's not varieties, but breeds of cattle, the Holsteins and the Guernseys and the Jerseys. Primarily Holsteins was what most of them were, but I think they might have had some Guernsey in there too. And they would take it with another tropical breed of cattle, and they would crossbreed them because in the Philippines, one, hot and humid, and they also are very susceptible to dengue fever, if you're just the straight English varieties of Holsteins or Guernseys. And so they breed these cattle because the Holsteins are on a dairy you're trying for milk production, and these tropical cattle that were bred to survive and thrive in these temperatures don't deliver much milk. And so therefore what we're trying to do is cross them, and then cross them a couple more times and get to maybe about a 60 to 65% Holstein and 35% tropical breed. And that gave you the best milk with the best resistance to disease and the mosquitoes, grubs, everything that would get on them and actually transfer the dengue fever, and the cattle would be either poor or die. And so I was able to look at a lot of the things in the farming there around New Zealand in this area where they were breeding these cattle. It was really interesting to see the end product showing up in the Philippines after I had looked at the breeding program in New Zealand. And it was quite extensive. They would take and breed them, and they'd be ready. And then they would get them in calf, and then they would put them on a boat and ship them over to the Philippines, where once they got to the Philippines, they had to stay in quarantine for several months before they would release them to you to take to your ranch. And the trip was very hard on them. Cattle were in very poor condition when they arrived. They were quarantined in not the best conditions. And by the time we were able to get them out of quarantine, most of them were in pretty poor condition. Some of them lost their calves because it was just too much of a struggle, so they aborted. And so we saw them get the product of that. We saw them breeding these heifers to the tropical, and the calves that they produced while there were really phenomenal. So it was really interesting to see it full circle, to watch them from the time that they were in New Zealand, what they were doing in that breeding program, to get them up to the point where they would then be ready to ship them in calf to the Philippines, and then see those calves be born there. It was just really fun to do that whole project. But in addition to that, New Zealand people are really very outward growing. They're just so easy to talk to, so helpful, so happy that you're there, and know that I could be of service and of value to a lot of the farmers. And we'd look at some of the people that were there were farmers. Others were dealing with a lime quarry, where they would crush lime. And as part of the things that we did in this high rainfall area, and I'll give you an idea of that in a second, because of the high rainfall, we would leach a lot of soluble calcium out. And so the lime quarries, once we started doing the what we call the Kinsey-Albrecht method, which is keeping our calcium and magnesium in the proper balance for the type soils you have, and getting the right amount of calcium and the right amount of magnesium so that the soil works as intended. It gets a lot of water to penetrate and move through, a lot of aeration back into the soil to get maximum production. So people with the lime quarry were there, and I got to meet them and see how things were going. Looked at a few dairies while we were around there in New Zealand, which was a fairly new proposition. They had some really good technology there already, and the milk industry was transitioning from a sheep, almost exclusively sheep, to a lot of dairies. And in some cases, the dairies were really struggling because they had put up a lot of money to build facilities, buy cows, and then the market crashed. So a lot of them were in tough straits financially, and it was difficult on them. People that had a lot of years in farming in their family, a lot of these farmers felt a real pressure because they were under such gun that they were getting very worried about losing the family farm just from circumstances, not anything that they were doing wrong, but they started onto this dairy journey at the wrong point in time. They invested the money just ahead of the lowered prices, and all of a sudden it became very difficult for them to survive. So it was difficult to talk to those farmers, but it was trying to help them in any way that I could to let them know that you need to still have high quality feed, or your milk production will go down even farther, and you'll be in a deeper hole. So we went through that, but I learned a lot about water. I thought, I was considered at that time an expert about water. Not a lot of people understood the effects of water, but I was working with my friend Bruce down there, and I'm looking at his soils, and he says, I just can't get my calcium up high enough. I'm putting enough lime on, but I'm not getting calcium up, and I know we could do better if we could get the calcium up. And I had told him about adding, above the requirement, because you may be losing it to rainfall. And a lot of times with pure rainfall, it's acidic, really acidic on the south, close to the South Pole, or really acidic as you get closer to the North Pole. For whatever reason, we get a more acidic rain the farther we get away from the equator. And as we're down there, he was down at a pH that was really fairly low, of about 5.6 or 5.8, somewhere in there, which is very acidic. And so it was dissolving a lot of limestone, and then it was moving through the soil. What I didn't know until I had talked to him is, I said, how much rainfall are you getting? I had him take samples, knew what the rainfall was like, and then he said, well, we'll get about 2, and I'm thinking 2 feet, not a big deal. And he said, over 2 meters. Well, that's about almost 7 feet, 84 inches of rainfall. And so no wonder he couldn't get enough calcium there. As fast as it was breaking loose with this, it was like this constant acidity bombardment on these soils, dissolving that and just moving it through. So I started to change recommendations and changed a whole program on my water program, so that people understood that when you get these high rainfalls, you have to way over apply lime to hold enough in the soil so that it doesn't just leach through. And we got a lot of good success with Bruce and I working on those together. And a lot of times it was from California to down where he lives in New Zealand, and that difference we were still able to. And I still talk to him when he runs into a real strict problem. So those were 2 great trips. Actually, it's probably engulfed with maybe a third one there, but they were all into a fabulous country. It's a beautiful, beautiful country with, just the diversity. I didn't get much down into where they have a super premium wine grape growing area down there, growing mostly whites, because they don't get the extreme high temperatures to get reds to be the best they can be. But we had some really great wine grapes that they grow down there. Lots of livestock, still a lot of sheep, and just a great people to have to be around. And then able to see my friend Bruce and his wife, where they had been to California before with us, but to see them down in their own settings in their house was fabulous, because we were able to have them at our place, at our house, previous to that. So we got to see how each of us lived in different conditions and different settings, but drawn together if by craziness, by how I got on this crazy consulting journey, the places and people I've met, the long-term friendships I've made. It's been the most rewarding part, and it's funny how life will turn these things, and it's not the reason I went into it, but it's the prize that I get to keep. I've helped a lot of farmers. That's what I was trying to do, but then to have these experiences and the people, and just the quality of the people that I've met, and their ability to help me and reach out to me, and me being able to give it back as much as I can, has been probably one of my favorite and most fun things that I've been able to do. And I will tell you, these people are not just great people. They are funny. And we've laughed and laughed and laughed. And laughter really is something that's good for the soul to make you feel better. It's really a tremendous gift to be able to get to do what I got to do. And the people that I've been able to do it with have been just the best. So I'm going to end on that. But hopefully you're enjoying some of the travels I've been on and some of the things I've done. And if these work good and we see a good response to them, we'll do some more. I've got several other places in the world that would be fun to talk about too. So until next time, stay curious.
Thanks, Bill, for another absolutely incredible episode of Agriculture in a Nutshell. I'm sure that everyone listening thoroughly enjoyed hearing all of your adventures in one of your many trips to New Zealand. For everyone who's listening, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And like Bill said, always stay curious.